program are the opinions of the people expressing them, and not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along today. Today is Tuesday, the 27th of September, September 2022, and a beautiful fall day here in Minnesota. We've got a great program for you today. It kind of reflects what I have always wanted to do, and that is to have international conversations with friends, talking about the world that we live in, the world that we are creating. And today I'll be with people that are eminently qualified to share their experiences, their stories, to talk to each other and talk to you here on KFAI and on across our social media platforms, anywhere that you may be catching us from. As always, we want you to like and share if you're a social media engaged person, and let people know that you're in this conversation right now. First hi to my colleague and co-host, Brenda Lyle-Gray. Brenda, how you doing? Good to see you again.
How are you?
And to all of our guests coming in today, I tell them that Brenda and I were in kindergarten together in Kansas City, Missouri, where we both were born or raised, and that we're both 75. And so it's been a lifelong story. And the beauty of this relationship, this conversation, is that we've got a context. We have an analysis of how the world was when we were 5 that informs how we see it today. So we bring that to the conversation. I want to begin by connecting with a new hero of mine, a person that I have come to adore and am learning to appreciate word by word, and that is Molara Wood. Molara is joining us, I think, from Nigeria. Molara, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here.
Good afternoon, evening here in Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Well, let me start by showing the book that she sent me. The book is called Indigo, and just the liner notes say that Molara Wood is a journalist, critic, and former art columnist for The Guardian in Lagos. Her work has been published in journals and anthologies, including Farathina, BBC Africa Beyond, Chimarenga, and African Literature Today. She's won the inaugural John LaRose Memorial Short Story Competition and received an award from the Commonwealth Broadcasting Association, formerly arts and culture editor of Next newspaper. She lives in Abuja and is working on her first novel. And one of the reasons that I wanted to connect with you today was to ask you to talk about a person that you've written about in the past few days, one of the giants in literature, Bibi Bandele.
Yes.
Introduce him and tell us about the significance of his work as a creator, novelist, filmmaker, and what will be missing from him.
Bibi Bandele was a multi-hyphenate artist, a consummate artist, who first came to prominence in 1990 for winning the International Student Playwright competition. And this was a competition entered by thousands of budding playwrights from all over the world. At the time, he was just 22. He was a student of the university, what is now the Obafemi Awolowo University in Ile-Ife, one of the premier universities in Nigeria. And from there, he moved to London in 1990 and just did great things in theater over there, wrote so many plays, started writing novels, and in the last 10 years has been responsible for some of the basically epic films that have come out of Africa and the Nigerian movie industry here. Was also a photographer, was doing so many things, and he excelled at all of these things. So he was a storyteller to the core, and his loss last month has been so devastating for the literary environment in Nigeria and across Africa, but also in the diaspora, in the UK, where he lived and wrote about Black life there, wrote about Brixton, where he lived. There's just so much shock. Dying at the age of 54 unexpectedly, had still so much to give. And also this happened a month before the premiere of his latest film, which is Elesioba, Death and the King's Horseman, which is an adaptation of the great play by the great Nigerian Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka. So that really gives you this marrying of plays and film, literature, and all of that. And it was really an embodiment of what B. Bandele stood for. And he was still going to do so much more. And it's such a huge loss and an irreplaceable person. And I also wanted to say that writers of my generation, we call ourselves the third generation of Nigerian writers. And B. Bandele was not much older than many of us, the same age as some of us. I was born the same year as him. And but he really lit a path long before many of us even came to writing. Many of the Nigerian names that you're hearing about now internationally, he came to prominence long before them, and he was really a pathfinder in that respect.
Malara, thank you so much for that. I want to ask you to tell people how we met. I'm so pleased to have this conversation with you. I met you in a telephone or a Zoom conference. Talk about that if you would. And I want to also bring in my friend Adésojí, who is also from Nigeria, who's in UK right now. Bring Adésojí in as well. But Malara, talk about our meeting.
Yes, I used to live in the UK myself, and I've been back in Nigeria now for about maybe 14 years. And that's another thing that I shared with B. Bandele, because he was someone that I used to run into on the arts in the arts circles in London. He was very much a Londoner in many respects. So yourself and I, we met very fortuitously in a Zoom conference about the returnees, the Lagosians, indigenes of Lagos, whose forebears returned from places like Brazil at the end of the abolition of the slave trade. And so all of these people connecting and talking about their heritage, the names, the food, the culture, the architecture that they brought back to enrich our lives here, and which we see evidence of it all over Lagos today, especially. And I went, as a lover of history, as a devoted student of the Yoruba. I'm Yoruba myself, so I follow these things studiously. So I was there just to listen and to share, and you were there. And that's how we met, which was such an amazing thing.
Yeah. I feel so fortunate and so lucky and so grateful for the chance to meet with you and to be in your company and to meet the other Lagosians and people in Bahia who have discovered how we can be with each other. I think that's the key, is the discovery. The technology affords us a chance to have connections that had been lost in a very practical way, but lost in a spiritual way. But I think we're at a point of rediscovery, of re-emergence, of reuniting, of remembering. And the remembering will occasion a new sense of authorship. You and I are writers, right? We are authors. Well, what we truly are authoring is the future that will create a narrative that shows our people and humanity, one and the same, victorious.
Yes.
Sustained,
yes,
right? And
yes.
reflecting the best values of what it is to be a human being. Adésojí and I have met on a new platform called Narrative, narrative with a K, like knowledge with a K, right? And within the Narrative platform, there's a project called Nubia. And I have to keep giving praise to Dr. Karen Hunter and Dr. Greg Carr. Karen Hunter, a journalist, of significance. And also Dr. Carr, the head of the Africana Studies Department at Howard University. But during the pandemic, they decided to meet and conduct In Class with Carr, a weekly conversation between the two of them that they've opened up to the world. And now more than 1,000, close to 2,000 people chime in every Saturday to be engaged in this classroom. And the classroom is, what is it like to be with each other? And how do we approach issues around the world that reflect our interest and our possibility? Adésojí, good to see you in person. Thank you. You've been one of the great voices on the In Class with Carr and on the Monday night classes with Dr. Carr as well. Welcome to the conversation, Adésojí. And I think we probably have. Are you able to respond, Adésojí? So we're having technical challenges.
I'm here.
Go ahead. Okay. So introduce yourself if you would.
I'm here. Okay, yeah. Yes, my name is Adésojí Igínlá. I am from Lagos Island in Lagos. I'm familiar with the history of the place she talked about in her, with Sister Molara talked about in her opening statement, i.e. the Brazilian quarters were Ologbo, Lafiaji, and Campos. And as they will say in our parts, no matter if someone is older than you by a day, you have to greet them in respect. So I'll say Ekale. So
Ekale.
Yes, Ekale, Shedadani.
Adupe Alafia ni.
Okay, Adupe. I met Brother McFarlane, as he is rightly introduced, on our path for not just remembering, but also reconnecting. The thing is, what Dr. Carr and Professor Hunter introduced was not just a novel innovation on this side of the world, but it's something we used to do back home, because we sit at the feet of our elders and understand how it is that they navigate the world. So in so doing, we're able and tooled up on how to engage the world when we take our footsteps. So not only was it novel, and the office hours on Monday also was a way of a back and forth with those who were teaching us. And I think that's where Brother Al came in, and Brother Al told us about his journalistic journeys from the 70s, and we were, wow, so somebody has been at this journey this long. Then it means that forum just sort of brings everybody in, and to borrow the popular phrase there is, everybody was bringing their brick. So we had the knowledge of back home, and we also had the opportunity to read the books here, the history books, and hoover them up. So tying them together, we found commonalities that we can work on, and that will be the way forward. And that's the way we can grow this culture, we can reconnect, and also go about what we intend to do, which is reconnect the family, the global family, and hopefully we get it done. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for your spirit and your voice. Molara, you talked about literature. You and I are involved in writing. I can tell you, I am totally fascinated with the energy coming out of Nigeria and out of Africa. And, the issue is, it's not that I should be fascinated all of a sudden, because Africa has always been there and has always been producing magnificently. The problem is Al McFarlane just woke up, just came into awareness, right? And so I say that to put in perspective the importance of us learning with intention each other again, knowing each other again. And I think the literature that you're part of is producing that opportunity, and the fact that we can connect tricontinentally is awesome, I believe. What do you think, Molara?
Indeed. We are people of stories, and stories are about connection, about determining, who we are, about letting the world know who we are, about joining our voices with brothers and sisters all over the world. And so literature, culture is very, very important in that process. And also culture, literature, storytelling is also important because these are ways in which we find commonalities amongst ourselves. And as Black people, for instance, there are so many forces in the world today that seek to divide us. I mean, just go on social media on an average day. African Americans are in combat sometimes with Africans of the continent, and people forget that we all come from the same source. We are all, and like, the Gavis of this world have taught us in the past, the issues facing Black people all over the world, we can better confront them when we see ourselves as part of the same family and we make those connections. And we see that we have we have in different places suffered from historical events, but we are the same people. And if we can find those commonalities, then we can better place ourselves in the world. And culture is one of those ways. For instance, you mentioned Bahia earlier, and you go to Bahia, you see, I've not been to Bahia, but I've talked to a lot of people who have been to Bahia. I've read a lot about Bahia. I've read books about Bahia that are like reading a Yoruba book. And so you see that the people, the resilience of Yoruba culture in Bahia, the food, even the songs, the stories, the names, the deities, then you see that, wow. And if culture has not been preserved, and if we didn't have storytelling, we wouldn't have all these things to show us. So on the larger level as Black people, then, for instance, in the forum where we met, as Yoruba people, and to see also our contributions to the world. It gives us courage to better face that world tomorrow and to better speak in our voices. Yes.
I want to show you what we're doing at my company, Insight News. We are a weekly community newspaper, but we've added a section that we call Afrodescendientes. And that section came from, the original idea was that I would present stories in Spanish and in English. Spanish because my father is from Cuba, and I grew up familiar with Spanish language as a Cuban, though his parents are Jamaican, though all of us are African people. And through my association with the young man that was on the call with us from Bahia, Mestre Yoji Sena, we decided that as opposed to just doing Spanish and English, we should do Spanish, English, and Portuguese for the Portuguese-speaking African world. And he said, well, shouldn't we do Swahili as well? Good idea. Well, Al, we should also do Yoruba. So, okay, let's do Yoruba. And we finally added to that French and Somali. There is a huge Somali presence right here in Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota. And so this is what I call innovation at the local level. This is the spirit that Adésojí is talking about. It's how we innovate to create and to bring ourselves together. We hope to keep doing things like that. Let me bring in, speaking of literature and connecting around reading, Pat Pionsky. Is it Pionsky or Plonsky? I'm not sure if I'm saying it the right way. Pat, are you there? Pat Plonsky.
Yes. Yeah.
Pat
Thanks,
is
Al.
locally here with me in Minnesota. He leads Books for Africa. Talk about what you're doing and what books mean to you and how you play into encouraging literacy, literature, access to the world through books.
Well, thank you, Al. My pleasure to be on your program here and listening to the great conversation. Books for Africa is the world's largest shipper of books to the African continent. We're based in St. Paul, Minnesota. We have a large warehouse in Atlanta, Georgia as well. And we have now sent 56 million books over the last 34 years. A lot of these books, come from Minnesota, where we're based here, but we send books, a lot of them out of Atlanta as well. And we've sent books to every single country on the African continent over the last 34 years. Books, for me, are just an important way to prevent problems from happening. It's a great preventative thing because it builds economic development, it builds literacy, it builds understanding, and adding to an educated populace and a literate populace allows people all over the African continent to read all kinds of books once they develop those skills. So happy to work. And the last thing I would just add is we work very closely with the African diaspora community around the world. We just had a warehouse party on Saturday in St. Paul and one the week before in Atlanta. And members of our board and diaspora from many, many countries all working for this same effort with the same goal. And I see one of your guests is in the UK. We also get books out of the UK that we send. We've sent a lot of books to Nigeria over the years and working on some more projects there. So we'll send books to 27 countries in any given year.
Adésojí, what is the challenge of literature and information from our point of view as African people? I think that I have to, number one, appreciate that words are words, text is text, narrative is narrative, but what messages are conveyed matter. And if the messages are ones that devalue my life, I have to be suspect. If the messages are ones that elevate Europeans, for example, as the source of that God is their idea, then where does that leave me? Well, obviously, it's an idea that I cannot accept. And so I encourage both myself and others to challenge. And our embrace of literature has to be one path that also includes critical thinking, critical analysis. Adésojí, what do you think?
I buy into that idea in that my foremost writer that I tend to follow back home, because most people do have their favorite. Mine was Chinua Achebe. So,
okay.
And starting from Things Fall Apart and into all his essays, you will find there's a common thread, and the common thread is this. He would say this. He would say, as long as the lions don't have a historian, the story of the hunt will continue to glorify the hunter. So it is imperative that you chronicle your own story, because if you don't tell your own story, somebody else would, and you don't have control on how the story is transmitted. A classic case of his pushback was Conrad wrote The Heart of Darkness. The Heart of Darkness is
Joseph Conrad.
one novel. Yeah, Joseph Conrad. Thank you very much. So Joseph Conrad wrote The Heart of Darkness, and The Heart of Darkness effectively pictures Africans as savages, one without diction, only sound, and basically, hideous kind of features and what have you. And he did a good job, considered one of the best literary criticism of a book of literature by any artist was what Chinua Achebe did. And the essay is titled Joseph Conrad's The Heart of Darkness, I Don't Think So. So it's a brilliant work of criticizing literature. So it goes back to the idea that you must tell your own stories, any shape or form. I mean, Things Fall Apart chronicles the idea of how colonialism entered Africa. Mm-hmm. But he didn't just paint the idea of how it came into Africa. He told the story of what it confronted in Africa. How, as he sees it, not only was it bad in the sense that it truncated what would otherwise have been a thriving culture, but also the fact that it not only turned the people who had that culture against their own culture, it also showed the world that the moment you allow, quote unquote, civilization in, be careful what you're going to lose. And Nigeria, as we currently have it, is a case in point. some of our languages are struggling. Not for want of the fact that people don't speak them, but the medium, our videos, our genres, our writing are largely in English. And so there is that element of how do you re-engage back with culture through the medium of principal expression, which is language, not just music.
Love that. Love the conversation. Let me spin and broaden the conversation a little bit. First of all, I'm Al McFarlane. You're listening to The Conversation with Al McFarlane here on KFAI and across our social media platforms. So pleased to have an international panel with me today. This show is my dream show, connecting with sisters and brothers in Nigeria, in UK, here in Twin Cities, in the mountains. My colleague Brenda Lyle-Gray is in New Mexico, and we're finding ways to be together. I want to pivot a little bit to South Africa because the guests I'm bringing up right now have created a business to say what they call is the real South Africa. Mark and Dr. Latasha Blanton are a couple that moved to South Africa to promote business and culture and knowledge and awareness. And they're doing things coming up in, I think, November and beyond to introduce people from here or elsewhere to opportunities for living in South Africa and beyond. I think we got a video showing right now. Let's listen to that video, and then I'll bring in Mark and Latasha. So I don't know if there's sound to that video that we can play for our radio people. Vash. Okay. We saw it, but if you're on radio, you didn't hear it. And it's a beautiful video presented by the Blantons. Their company is The Real South Africa. Good afternoon, Mark and Latasha, Dr. Latasha. And is it Dr. Mark or Brother Mark? Tell me the right way to address you, Mark.
Mr. And this is the good doctor.
Okay, Dr. Latasha and Brother Mark. Okay, good to see you both. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being here. Talk about what the real South Africa, the business is, and what you all are doing, what you're discovering about our people connecting with Africa and what we are experiencing as we make the connection.
Okay, very easy. The company itself, we came here and we just, we had a really good experience, from our South African friends who we met over time. And so every time we went back to the US, we always longed for being here. So in the end of the day, we decided to capture that, and we wanted to share it with those in the diaspora, especially in the US, those who hadn't experienced this at all. So we wanted people to have the same experience that we had, but we, put it in a condense it and make it work for them. So that's basically the concept.
What are your backgrounds? How did you grow up? I mean, I'm so impressed that you had both the courage, the nerve, and the good sense to not be stifled in your willingness to move across the planet.
So I grew up in a very small town in Virginia. I won't even say the name because it won't make sense. But from there, growing up in a rural area, woods, lots of play outside, went to college in North Carolina, moved further south to go to PT school to get my doctorate in Florida, then eventually moved back north. And then just in those experiences, becoming a physical therapist, owning our practice that we had for 10 years, we just veered off that path after visiting South Africa and eventually just decided to, I won't say give up my career, but definitely do something different. And then for him, I'll let him tell you like how he grew up and stuff, because his story is a lot cooler than mine.
Well, yours is pretty cool. I like it. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I have humble beginnings, very humble beginnings. From North Carolina. I grew up in North Carolina, in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and then of course at some point, I was a young super trooper, and I joined the military, and that was a good move. I joined the military, spent about 13 years doing that. Spent a couple tours in Germany, went to Desert Storm, did a few things here and there. Got trained in so many different areas. That's insane. And then I ultimately transitioned to the U.S. Secret Service, where I was on the vice president's detail at the end, with Joe Biden. And the good part about it was, part of my journey while we were starting our business and doing our thing, I got the opportunity to come to South Africa during the World Cup in 2010 with Joe Biden. And that exposed me right there. I mean, I had been several countries, several different places, Moscow, you name it. I've been there with the vice president at the time, which was Joe Biden. And but coming here, it just changed my trajectory. So at that point, we just came up with a whole new plan over the years, and here we are.
Well,
The land of Biko.
let me ask you, I mean, what was it like to work for the vice president? And what's it like? I'm being much a layman here, and I'm a reporter, curious. What's it like to work for the Secret Service? And what's it like to work for the vice president, Joe Biden in particular? What can you say about that? I'm fascinated. I'm listening.
That's fine. No, seriously, it was good. I will say, and I'm not trying to, give myself any kudos, but the people that the U.S. Secret Service hire it's a certain type of people, and normally A-type personalities, because we got to go around the world and we got to do our job regardless of where we are and what we do. So, it was kind of like, being the best wherever we are. So it was good just being around that. Again, being around protectees, because before that I was with Dick Cheney. And to be close to these people, it's different than when you see them on the TV or their political stance. They're just people going through things, like all of us, but we get to see it up close, and they're used to us being around. So they don't think, oh yeah, he's here, so let's keep it quiet. They're like, no, they just, it is what it is. So you hear a lot of things, and that's when you start talking about, top secret clearances with SCI, polygraph, things like that, because you hear a lot of stuff as Secret Service. So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just say it was fun.
It was fun. We traveled a lot. Saw a lot of stuff.
So what's your impression, having been now in South Africa for several years and having created your business there? What is the opportunity that you discovered, and what are you telling other people like Al McFarlane, for example, who probably would love to visit you in South Africa and learn about opportunities there? I have visited quite a few times Ghana, loved Ghana, and I've been to Uganda, loved Uganda. Have not been to South Africa yet. I visited London a lot, loved that as well. But traveling is such a wonderful thing, and I think it's something that we African people need to build into our everyday growing and living. We deserve to see the world and to be seen in the world as our authentic selves. What do you think, Mark?
Okay, I would say, especially with the travel piece, and especially coming to Africa, as African people that are in the diaspora, obviously, to open your aperture, and so you can see more of what it means to be African and melanated is very liberating, because we never get taught these things. We never get into African culture. We never, understand, what it means to greet another African person, and what how can I say it? How inclusive that they are of you. But if you never visit, you never travel, and you stay behind the wall, I think you're missing out on a lot of things that will enhance your life as an African person, even though you are in the diaspora. So that's what I've found. Yeah.
Well, I want you to take the time to invite people to come to one of your seminars or to follow you on social media, because you've got a lot you're offering the world right now.
Yeah.
Well, most people can find us on YouTube. The channel is The Real South Africa. You can find us on Instagram, The Real South Africa 18. You can find us on Facebook, The Real South Africa. You can also, most importantly, go to our website, therealsouthafrica.com. That's where you'll be able to find all of our experiences in Joburg, Cape Town, Durban, Kruger National Park. We have mixed trips that go to Joburg and Cape Town, or Joburg and Durban, and even Joburg, Durban, and Cape Town for those who want to actually try and get as much in as they can in a 2-week time frame. And we do some customized trips as well. But we usually tell people, if they're looking to transition, they can also purchase the book on our website as well. We did write a small ebook to kind of assist people with transitioning to South Africa properly, because it is a country you need to know how to progress through their visa and their immigration system properly. You don't want to be on the other side of that. So we did put that out there as well. But we mostly encourage the diaspora to come on a visit, and then from there, make your decision and your assessment of South Africa from there. And if you decide you want to stay longer or return on a visit, then of course we will assist you, with anything that we can.
That's awesome. I think we have more videos. Maybe Vash, if you're there, can you pull up one of the videos that we can share? We have to have the sound because some of our audience is on radio, so they're using their imagination to see. The rest of us are seeing and hearing. Here we go. We don't have sound there yet. Yeah, so for some reason we have the video but not the sound. And we'll try it again later. We can do this again. So I want to open the conversation up and just free form here, freestyle. Malara, impressions, thoughts, feelings. As you hear us figuring out how we can be together, what comes to your mind? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's the first time that I'm learning of the real South Africa, and I've just been here with thoughts. And it was great that you asked him about his trajectory, because it's another example of how far we come in life, because it's such an unexpected kind of experience. So I'm interested. I've been to South Africa a couple of times, but I'm interested in why South Africa exactly itself.
Okay. Can I answer that?
Please. Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yes, please. This is the journalist in me coming in now.
No, here I am. I'm since 2010 is World Cup. The whole world was here. It was incredible here in South Africa. Everybody's rooting for their soccer/football teams, and being in the DC metropolitan area, traveling throughout the world, especially in America, through all the campaigns. You might be in 3 cities in a day. And the people that I saw, the Black people that I saw, I mean, they were executives. They were doing things that I generally do not see. And,
well, not in that number.
Say again?
Not in that number. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you see Black people in high positions.
Yeah, of course, in the States. Yeah, it was just, it was so many, top level people, doing things, and they were African. And keep in mind, I have been everywhere else in the world. I mean, you name it, I've been there, from Chile to you name it. And I had never been to Africa. So this was my first stop. And then when I met the people and I was embraced so lovingly, I didn't want to leave. I actually got on the plane and cried because I didn't want to leave. And then they treated me so well to the point to where they hosted me. My family, my wife, she didn't come. My mother was alive. She came, my daughter. and they hosted us. So, it was perfect. So at some point, I kind of felt like I was more over the years, because I was here like every 3 or 4 months. I was here. Yeah, there was a nice flight out of DC, and I just jumped on it. And at the end of the day, all I can really say to you is this. I felt so good about being here. I felt like I was home, and I wanted my friends and people that I knew to feel the same thing. And so ultimately, we chose South Africa, and then the culture shock wasn't bad at all, because of the infrastructure and so forth. So we found it to be home here than DC.
As you've been talking, I just remembered actually 2010 with the World Cup, as you say, and I can see how someone can have that kind of epiphany at that time. I think that's when the song "It's Time for Africa," and it was a great feeling about just the continent, not just South Africa, but what was happening in South Africa, being a beacon for Africans in general and Black people all over the world. It's great, and so this just gives me a great feeling, just us being here and to know that you're doing that over there, and we need more positive stories like that to show that. And I agree with you also that sometimes, like when I moved back to Nigeria, there was that something lifted, and sometimes people can have this kind of illumination or epiphany sometimes, where you just feel, I should be here now. And but what is also great is that we're able to reach out and connect all over the world, and shine a light for others.
Important.
I tell the story, I mentioned when we opened the show that Brenda and I were in kindergarten together as 5-year-olds in Kansas City, Missouri. I married a woman from Mississippi. My mother is from Mississippi. My wife is from a town called Crystal Springs, Mississippi. And when I first visited her town, small town, like 3,000-4,000 people, 20 miles south of Jackson, the capital, we would sit around on a porch and just sit there and watch. When cars would drive by, you'd wave. Car drives by, you wave, right? That's what you do every day, is wave at people walking up and down the road. Across the street from her sister's house was a chicken coop, a pen. There was a hog place in the back. And so I told my wife, Bobby, Crystal Springs is just like the neighborhood that my grandfather lived in up in the mountains in Jamaica. We live in the Blue Mountains, a place called Mile Gully, town called Adésojí. Adésojí had one light, not a stoplight, but one light. And it was one intersection, and our house was about a mile from that light. And all of the characters in the community in Mile Gully in Adésojí were also present in Crystal Springs, meaning somebody was very smart and studious, somebody was shady, somebody was always warm and light and inspiring, and somebody was always negative. Somebody was pious and religious, somebody was a deceiver. But all of these positions occupied spell community, right? And so the community I grew up in Kansas City, I saw it in Crystal Springs. I saw the same community in Adésojí in Jamaica. And I tell you, friends, I saw the exact same community in Ghana, the exact same community in Uganda. Our people are the same everywhere. And in all of our communities, all of these roles they are occupied, and they are working their way out. And these relationships are real, but they are so similar, and the principles beneath them are the same. So I think it's exciting that we can know that, even though I only met Adésojí online, I feel like I know him. I call him brother and understand him. I call Molara sister because she greeted me as a Yoruba, right? And to do that, when you did that, Molara, you made me feel so good. When I think I told the story that I did DNA and my DNA indicates that I am, through my mother's side, 99% Yoruba. And so she greeted me as a Yoruba man, and I feel good for that. We're the same people everywhere, and how do we discover our sameness and build on that? And Adésojí, how do we take this and build a future? How do we reconnect and create and project something that reflects our capacity to innovate and see ourselves as not the problem, but we are the solution? Adésojí, what do you think?
I'll start with this premise. There's an instrument back in Yoruba land. It's called the drum. When you beat the drum, one thing happens. Everybody raises up their heads to see where's the sound coming from. So why do you want to know where the sound is coming from? Because the beating of the drum signifies certain things. I want to say something. Now, what's the drum now? The drum is not the old traditional drum, but it's technology. Technology is the drum. So how do we use technology? That's the key thing. Do we use technology to highlight the fact that we're inadequate, or do we use technology to highlight our stories, our experience, just like the gentleman has just recounted now? I mean, look at the journey he's taken around the world. There was no point in time that will tell him that he will sit down and actually recount that story to people he's never met, but he's doing it using the drum. So technology is the way forward. How do you harness the technology? You harness the technology in so many ways. Sister Molara is back home. She knows the story of the Brazilians. She knows how they've returned. Now, how do you put that story back out there so that somebody else who wants to take the same journey can embrace that journey and come home thinking there is a place for me wherever you go? So, and for those people who still haven't heard the drum, the onus is for those who have heard to carry the message forward. So for me, that is the power of technology. And that was highlighted during the pandemic. We were able to tune out the noise and hear the drum, hear ourselves speak, hear ourselves understand what it is we're saying to each other. And the kudos to you and the likes of Professor Hunter, that drum continues to be beaten. And people are coming to that drum to say, you know what? I think I need to be here. Just like Sister Molara says, she went back home and the realization hits her. I need to be here. And then take the journey forward. And then also do one thing. Don't just keep the sound to yourself. Transmit the sound to somebody else and give them the platform to share their journey.
I'm reaching back as you're talking to the collection of books, and what I've been reading a lot lately that I love so much is the work of Aikwe Arma, and this book, The
Ways of the Companion,
right, is awesome. What are you reading right now, Adésojí? What's taking your interest at the moment?
I am reading the trilogy by Chinua Achebe. Incidentally, the book would be 59 years old in November, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So he wrote 3 of the classics, as we call them: Things Fall Apart, No Longer at Ease, and Arrow of God. And maybe towards the end of the program, I will read a particular chapter here that chronicles the problem we face, and hopefully we can get beyond that. Because
Adésojí, I wanted to ask you, was he
Yes.
a man of the people? That was
Yes.
one of his books. Was that him?
Yes,
yes,
that was him, a man
That-
of the people.
Okay.
Yes.
that was him.
That
He
was
wrote,
an excellent. I taught his books, but a man of the people stood out for me. because he was
A Man of the People was published 1966.
Yeah,
That's the one that foretold the coup in
The
Nigeria,
coup
in a way.
for which
Yes.
he had to run back to the east
he did. He had to flee. Yeah.
because they went to his workplace and said, "Where is he?" By which time he was already gone.
Oh, he was bold. And Malaya, I just wanted to tell you one of the things with South Africa, and I started studying, going all the way back, was that Mandela and Desmond Tutu and Steve Biko were role models for resilience, for history, for strength. I mean, you can just put all types of adjectives on those gentlemen. And it opened up for us, for some of us baby boomers, that's what Al and I are, but it opened up that door of understanding our Blackness, and I talk about Steve Biko's comment all the time to Rivette. What are you afraid of? We're human, just like you. And it just sticks with me because that's what I'd like to tell Ron DeSantis down in Texas. What are you afraid of?
In Florida.
So, and they're right, people that wrote about them and Robben Island and all of that. It was like, my goodness, if they could do it, so could we. We've got to dig for strength, and we definitely have to do it for November 8th. There's no joke in
Thank
the
you for
United
that
States
reminder.
with that one. Would you agree, Pat?
Thank you for the reminder.
Yep.
Go ahead, Malara.
Definitely. Thank you. Yes, thank you for the reminder. And Steve Biko also wrote, I think I Write What I Like.
Yep.
Which many of us
blew
have read.
up the cover.
Yes.
Yep. He was
We did
great.
some tricontinental or bicontinental programs with Nkosinati Biko anchoring for us in Joburg and also in Cape Town. We did 2 sessions, one at the end of the Truth and Reconciliation hearings, and we brought together jurists in Minnesota and media people in Minnesota in a neighborhood restaurant where I produced this live show. Back then, it was called the Insight KMOJ Public Policy Forum in partnership with another local community radio station. And we had our legal scholars and journalists talk to, through video conferencing, legal scholars who gave commentary on the meaning, the impact, the disappointments associated with the winding up of the Truth and Reconciliation sessions in South Africa. We did another one where we talked with people in Cape Town at the university about HIV/AIDS. And this was at a time when in South Africa, there was a denial that HIV/AIDS was a problem for that country. But in the neighborhood I live in North Minneapolis, we have one of the highest rates of HIV/AIDS and other STDs among people in general, Black people in particular, and Black teenagers in particular. So it was trying to shine a critical light on an important health issue for our people and to show that we have the same challenges everywhere. We did one more session like that from Lucille's Kitchen, where I sent a reporter to Berlin to talk with people that were Jews who were suing the government and industry for the theft of property and labor during the Nazi regime. And we had that conversation over our video conference, and that led to a conversation with Randall Robinson, the author of The Debt, who was in studio with us in North Minneapolis talking about what America owes Black people for the theft of our labor and the theft of our lives. And so all of that to say that it's so important that we talk, that we share, and that we validate each other, and that we build, and that we believe we have both a duty and an obligation, again, to create new narratives. And the narratives we create, we must believe, are narratives that will sustain not only our people, but humanity itself. Adésojí, jump in there. What do you think? How does that play out?
It chimes well with, again, I'll quote the great Chinua Achebe, which is, your story is as important as the next person's name. Speak it so that people can hear it. What is a person without a name? And what is that person without their story? So once you speak your story, once you speak your name, tell your story, and somebody else will hear it. They share their story, they share their name. That is how we connect. Again, we have to use the new drum technology.
What a wonderful conversation. We're out of time. I see a note from a regular viewer, Michelle Madison. I had an opportunity to meet former President Nelson Mandela, working with the National NAACP in the 90s. It was an honor. His spirit lives on. That's a wonderful comment. Thank you, Michelle, for listening all the time, but for making that conversation, that comment as well. We're out of time. This has been an hour, but it goes so quickly. Malara Wood, Sister Malara Wood, my Yoruba sister. So good to see you in person, such as this is, right? And good to have you in this conversation. Brother Adésojí, I think Yoruba as well, right? Because you
yes, I am.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
You'd be glad to help us with our Yoruba translations for this project. I'm going to take you up on that. And Brother Blanton, Sister Blanton, Dr. Blanton.
I can also help with that.
Great. I might be seeing you all real soon. We're going to see.
Okay.
Pat, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
and Brenda,
thank you.
as always, we have fun doing this show. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation. We're going to pass it back to the station in a minute, but you know what? Vosh, if you can, try one more time to close out with some of the video from the real South Africa. I don't know if the audio will be there, and the station can just pull the feed over when they want to, but if you have something that you can play again, your videos are strikingly beautiful.
They
Your
are.
work is just phenomenal. And
Love the animals.
if you can't get it right now, go to YouTube and find the real South Africa. You'll be impressed. Go ahead, Vosh, and to everybody else, we'll see you later. We'll just play it out with this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Pat, thank you for your work. 30 some odd years, 66 million books. My goodness.
Thank you.
So I still think we don't have the audio, and I'm sorry about that, but the visuals are stunning, and
They are.
it's great. And so while we're looking until the station pulls it back, Adésojí, let me ask you to just put a word in again for narrative in Nubia. I'm so impressed with the community we're creating there.
Yes, very much so. And I will enjoin people to come in. It's narratives with a K, KNARRATIVE. And please come in, join us. We're building something special. And you will find a community because we have multiple groups. And then essentially, you are going to be with community. It's important that we do this job, and growing the community is important. And come and join us.
Well, with that, we'll sign out. Thank you all. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Take care. Back to the station.